POC people adopted by white parents. What was your experience like? Adopted by two white parents, and I'm of Asian descent. My parents were excellent at exposing me to my heritage when I was young and also telling me about adoption, so it never felt like I was different than other kids. My parents were my parents, and I had another set somewhere in Asia. I never really saw color until about middle school, when other people who were more within an Asian culture brought me into their group, based solely on how I looked, and then it grew from there. I still have to tell people I don't speak another language, and when I get the inevitable "where are you ethnically from?" I have to keep from rolling my eyes. I'm solid white bread, lol. The only Asian thing about me is my physical appearance. It hasn't been bad, but it is frustrating when some people immediately assume you're phob because of your appearance or other things. I did experience slight racism as I grew, but certainly nothing awful. Someone once asked me if I could speak English when I was in first grade, yay, and others have told me I'm not Asian enough because of what I liked or didn't like. My wife was adopted into the States from SE Asia. She is in the early stages of writing a book about her experience. Of course, from the horse's mouth would be better, but she was never really into it. I like to believe I know her as well as anyone on this world, though, so I'll give it a shot. The important thing to remember on this subject is that kids aren't stupid, and they then turn into asshole teenagers who also aren't stupid. Some people go into this thinking that if they love the child enough, the color of their skin won't even be noticed. But it is. Other kids will immediately ask why they look so different from their parents at a much earlier age than if they were of the same race. Other adults would often come up to my wife as a child and tell her how lucky she was that her parents rescued her, which I'm sure some will say sounds sweet, but it's actually a pretty fucked up thing to repeatedly tell a child. As a teenager, she began asking questions way more difficult than her parents ever expected to receive about it, like asking her father if she was adopted to placate his guilt about the people he killed during the Vietnam War. My wife and her parents have a decent relationship now, albeit after a lot of therapy, but she will absolutely make sure to tell any parents who are considering adopting from another country that need to be absolutely sure they know what they're getting themselves into. It's definitely parenting on hard mode. I can answer this one. African American, was adopted at birth by white parents. I grew up in a town with not many other people of color, so I didn't realize I was missing out on my own culture until I was much older and left town. My parents tried their best to introduce role models of color into my life, but there was only so much they knew at the time. This was before YouTube, so things like working with my natural hair was a big challenge. My mom ended up taking me to other black moms for suggestions, or would send me to their moms to help fix me up. As an adult, I do believe I have some cultural identity issues in the sense that I don't feel like I'm white, nor do I feel like I'm black. I had the unique opportunity to meet my birth family a couple years ago and was completely in awe by black culture, yet bummed that I couldn't really relate. I appreciate both cultures, but don't really feel like I'm a part of either, if that makes sense. Other than that though, I'm happy with my life and the opportunities I've had that I may not have been able to have if I wasn't adopted. I could answer this. I'm very mixed and never met my father. My parents are both white, and I was with my mother for like the first 5 years of my life, so I was aware of my differences. I think it was hard fitting in, because I didn't look like my adopted family, nor did anyone else around me look like me. Again, I'm pretty ambiguous. I'd say that it's very difficult to change one's perspective, so the best you can do is accommodate it. Be upfront and open about it early on, because I think it can have lasting damage if unattended. Identity is definitely something I struggle with, but it's also allowed me to create something of my own as well without preconceived cultures, values, and beliefs to guide me. Overall, it's definitely a different experience, but not necessarily a bad one. Hope this helps. I was in foster care since I was an infant. My parents first took in 3 of my other sisters, then I was introduced about a year after them. I didn't recognize myself as a POC until I was told I was fostered. That was when I turned 5, I believe. The agency basically tried to keep us connected to our heritage, I'm Native American, by bringing us to POWs, sweats etc. or at least gave us the option to go. Personally, I never wanted to. I wanted to feel like I was really my family's daughter. Since I never knew anything different to begin with, I felt really disconnected with the thought of being native. Especially disconnected when the agency kept shoving it in my face that I wasn't their daughter. I felt at some point the agency made my parents feel like I was just some kid in their care. If I got mad, my parents would say, "If you don't like it here, you can get taken to the girls' home." The agency would chirp that in as much as possible. I still don't really know how to process my feelings because of that. I suggest live in a bigger town or city with more colored people. Also, don't let the agency make your child feel unwanted or easily replaceable. Do not mention money for care too often. The kid will feel like a job and disconnect. Treat them with the love you would give your own child. Lots of hugs, self-care days, playdates. Also, having a sibling with them would make it so much easier. Sorry for the second/third hand account, but my husband's father was a Korean War orphan adopted by white people. The most frequent complaint I hear from him and my husband regarding the issue is that people see them as Korean or Asian, even though they have no ties to the culture, and my father-in-law wants nothing to do with his birth family. I've even experienced a little bit of their frustration myself. When I first started dating my husband, we had some relationship issues and I tried talking to my parents and my therapist about it. Everyone was immediately like, "Do you think this is a cultural difference?" and just could not let that go. No matter how many times I tried to explain that, even though my husband is 1/4 Korean, he knows nothing about Korean culture, did not grow up with stereotypical Asian parents, etc. I was adopted at birth by Caucasians. When I was growing up, I realized my skin was darker than anyone else in my immediate family. When I asked my parents if I was adopted, they denied it. I was like 7 and had learned about adoption through a movie. They decided to let me know when I was 13 over 14. I have this feeling of not belonging. I have no idea what race I am, most likely indigenous mixed with something. My adoption was illegal, so there's no record of my BO family. I'm desperately trying to find out more about who they are for reasons. I'm almost convinced of doing a DNA test just to find out. I love my parents and would love them no matter what race they are, and I'm sure they'd love me just the same. My life has been great. I've had the same opportunities as my sister. I just wish they were more open about the whole situation. I guess I don't qualify as a POC, but here we go. So I'm 1/2 white. My BO mom is Mexican and has dark skin with very native features, but especially I pass for white. Mostly I feel uncomfortable with my ethnicity. The family I was adopted into is white with some Choctaw ancestry, about 1/4 I think, and participated in a lot of tribal events and culture. When I was little I thought that was really cool, and I wanted to be like them, but the tribe actually stopped adopting adoptees a couple of years before I was born. So that made it pretty clear that I wasn't part of that. Generally I don't talk about it unless someone directly asks me, and that makes me nervous because it always stings a little when they reply with "I thought you were just white." I really wish that I was more connected to the Hispanic and native side of my ancestry. In my head I feel like it's a part of me, but my Spanish is poor and I have relatively light skin, so I really don't think that other people want to hear that. So yeah, to answer your question, my experience with race is just discomfort. My husband is half Korean, half white. He grew up in a really small town where he was literally the only Asian person, as his mom left them when he was 8 and they moved to America. The amount of people who thought he was adopted and asked him what it was like was weird. Also, the weird rumors that his mom was a whore, his dad raped her, etc. were just weird. This made him not talk about being Asian. I mean, he'd even been burned at a party on the back with a cigar to see if Asians smelled like fish when they burned. We have never gone back to his hometown because it's so racist. It's been a decade, and when he moved, he realized it was fucking weird that people cared so much about him being Asian. No, he wasn't adopted, but I feel that when your parent looks different from what someone expects, they feel like they can question it or need to discuss it. Also, we got his school records. He had filled out that he was white on this worksheet, and it had been crossed out and someone had marked it Asian. Unlike all of his old transcripts. That really hurt him because he remembered marking white to fit in and realized what they meant was, do you look white? They didn't actually care if you were 50 over 50.